Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about something that I know annoys so many of us, and that is whining. Before we dive into talking about whining, I just want to let you know that I have a peaceful parenting quiz for you to be able to find out what your superpower is. There is always something that we're good at, no matter how much we're struggling. And if we can double down on what we're good at, it can help us in so many other areas. So if you go to my website, sarahrosensweet.com/parenting quiz, you can take a quick quiz, takes about a minute, and you can find out exactly what your parenting superpower is. I'd love to hear from you when you find out what it is, and I'd love for you to share that quiz with your friends. As I said, it's really great if we can double down on what we're good at, because what we focus on grows and it'll help us in so many other areas. Again, that's sarahrosensweet.com/parenting quiz. Okay, so let's dive in and talk about whining. Whining is actually scientifically proven to be extremely annoying, and it's something that gets all of our attention, and that's probably one of the big reasons why children whine, is because it's effective. It's effective at getting our attention. And so let's look at what the best practices are in terms of how we should respond to whining and how we shouldn't respond to whining. And also let's look at why kids whine. Because, as with all things in parenting, and especially in peaceful parenting, we don't want to just look at the behavior that's on the surface. We want to try and figure out what's driving that behavior. So we want to respond to what's underneath the whining, not just the whining itself as the symptom. I've heard a lot of well-meaning experts and well-meaning parents say things like, you should just ignore your child when they're whining because you don't want to teach them that you're going to respond to that annoying behavior. Or maybe I've heard people say things like, I can't hear you when you're talking like that, or I can't hear you when you're using that voice. And, you actually can hear them. Maybe you don't like that voice, but I don't ever want us to ignore our children or their behavior, because all behavior is a message. And also it feels a little bit antagonistic and a little bit, almost shaming to say, I can't hear you when you use that voice. It's almost like you're not existing in my presence unless you're speaking in a way that I approve of. So what can we do instead? Our first step in peaceful parenting is always to regulate ourselves. So use our pause button, which is stop, drop, and breathe. So, stop what you're doing, drop your agenda just for that moment, and just take a deep breath. We want to be able to respond to our child in their time of need rather than react to them out of annoyance or frustration. So stop, drop, and breathe. Try and find your compassion. We have all felt this way before, right? That we just want to whine when something's asked of us or when there's something that we don't like. I know I'm not the only one, or I hope I'm not the only one who's felt really whiny sometimes when there's something I don't want to do or something I have to do. And we just want to remember that, we all feel this way. How would we want someone to respond to us if we're having a hard time? Because that's what whining is. It's the perfect time to remember our mantra. They're not giving me a hard time. They're having a hard time. Okay, so what could be underneath that hard time? Let's say that you're trying to make dinner and your child wants you to play with them and they're going, Mommy or Daddy, please play with me. I won't whine too much anymore in this episode because I know it's annoying even when I'm pretending to be a whining child. But say they're whining about wanting you to play with them. Maybe they need some connection, right? Maybe they are feeling disconnected from you. And in that case, it's actually a direct plea to pay attention to them. But sometimes kids will be whining and they don't even know that they need connection. But in peaceful parenting, connection is always a great place to start. So, what can we do? We can empathize with our child. Oh, you wish I could play with you. I hear you, sweetheart. I can't play with you right now. I'm making dinner. Or maybe you can stop and just give them a hug and 5 minutes of your connection. So sometimes kids are whining because they need more connection and they're not feeling seen. And whining is a really great way to get our attention because it is that noise that's so annoying. So first step, I think always is, does my child need more connection? Another big reason why kids whine, say we're at the store and I want to go home. Oh, I promised I wasn't going to whine anymore, but I can't help it. I want to go home. I don't want to be here. This is boring. Maybe they don't have the resources of whatever we're asking them to do. Maybe they're tired or hungry or, as I said, bored, but really trying to recognize that your child doesn't have the resources that's being asked of them. And, maybe you can't change anything. Maybe you have to stay at the store, but it'll help us remain more patient just to recognize, they're whining because their resources are low right now. It's been a really long day. Or maybe there's some way that you can support them when they don't have the resources. Maybe there's another example. For example, they're, whining when they're getting dressed in the morning. I don't want to get dressed. And you recognize that maybe they didn't have a great night's sleep, or maybe things have been sort of tough lately and their resources are low. And so how can you give them support or help that they need? Oh, you don't want to get dressed? I hear you. Let me help you. Let's get dressed together and find some way to make it fun, or do it for them, or, some other way where you can give support when you do recognize that they don't have the resources of what's being asked of them. Another reason kids whine is because they can't quite get to crying. If you've been following my work, you know about the metaphor of the emotional backpack. It's a metaphor that was created by my mentor, Dr. Laura Markham. And when we have a full emotional backpack, the backpack is a metaphor for our bodies, and it's where we carry around tensions and stresses and big feelings when we haven't had a chance to either process them in the moment while they're happening, or to process them later and unload and empty that backpack through laughter or tears. So kids can whine sometimes when they have a full backpack and they just can't quite get to the crying. The crying, as I just mentioned, is how they empty that backpack, how they process those feelings. So anything you can do to help your child move through the whining and get to the tears to help them process those feelings. Empathy is a great way to do that. This is so hard. You really wish that you didn't have to go to school, or you really wish I could play with you, or whatever the thing is. Really try to see it from their perspective and let them know that you really get it, and be as soft as you can and as compassionate as you can. And that might help them get over the hump and actually get to the tears that are underneath the whining that are making them whine. Another way, it depends on the situation. We never want our children to feel like we're making fun of them, but another way that we can help them empty their emotional backpack is through laughter. So, maybe your child is whining and you can find a way to make them laugh. Be silly, take 5 minutes if you can to do something that's laughter, or even a fun thing would do is act like you're also a whiny kid to get them to laugh. And this really only works if your child is mildly upset. If they're already quite upset, they might just feel like you're making fun of them. So we really don't ever want anyone to feel like we're making fun of them. So use your own judgment on that. But if they are whiny, sometimes, getting them to laugh can help them process some of those feelings and get over the moment. Another reason why kids whine is because they feel powerless. So maybe back to that grocery store example, when they're whining about having to be there and why can't we go home? Think about some way that you can empower them so that they don't feel like they don't have any agency in the situation. So maybe it's giving them a job to do in that particular situation, or maybe it's giving choices. But just reflect on whatever the situation is. If you think that they are feeling powerless, what can you do to give them a little bit more power and make them feel like they're not just, coming along for the ride of whatever it is. Somehow make them feel important. Whether it's our children feeling like they need connection, or whether their resources are low, or whether they have a full backpack and they can't get to crying, or whether they feel powerless, just try and remember that they are doing the best they can. Children really are doing the best they can. As humans, we're wired to be in close connection with a caregiver. And if we're acting out of line with that and doing something super annoying like whining, it's because we can't do better. There's something else going on. So really try and find that compassion. And of course, give yourself the compassion first for how difficult it is. As I mentioned, there are scientific studies that show that, across cultures, whining is an incredibly difficult thing for people to experience or to be on the other side of. We want to not only problem solve and try and figure out what's underneath the whining and figure out what our kids need when they are whining, but we want to bring as much compassion to the situation as possible. So stop, drop, and breathe. Give yourself some compassion for how difficult it is, and then give your child some compassion. It's hard to be little, or it's hard to be 12, or it's just hard to be human sometimes. I think we all feel like whining sometimes, and some of us have better self-regulation or impulse control, and we don't whine even when we feel like it. But we all have hard times sometimes, and that's what we're here for, isn't it? We're here to try and help support our kids and make them feel loved and understood. And of course, you're not going to be perfect at it all the time, and there will be times where you give the annoyed, frustrated sigh and, would you please just stop whining? But as much as possible, really try to do the things that I've said and know that your child really is doing the best they can and respond to them from that place. I hope this was helpful. If you did find it helpful, I would love it if you could share it with a friend. The way that we can reach more families and help everyone be more peaceful is by making sure as many parents as possible know about peaceful parenting and feel supported on this journey. You can also join us in our free Facebook group, Peaceful Parenting with Sarah Rosensweet. We have so many wonderful parents who are all on this journey with you, supporting each other in the Facebook group. And finally, don't forget to check out the quiz and find out what your parenting superpower is. What we focus on grows. And I know sometimes it feels like nothing's going right, but I promise you, there are things that you are just wonderful at. So hop on over to sararosensweet.com parenting quiz and find out what your superpower is. I'd love to hear about it. You can share it with us in the Facebook group. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.